Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Mess. So Tarek and I got a fun and exciting update to the Nintendo 64 core for you guys this Thursday, and a heads up, I'm going to have another video tomorrow because some important changes came in about an hour and a half before I had to upload this video, and it does take some turnaround time. But we've got new graphical features, we have new games working, and tomorrow we're going to look at even more new graphical features and a bunch of new games that just started working. But the biggest feature in this build is fog, and we're going to show it to you in the funniest way possible. But the most famous example as a meme for fog on the Nintendo 64 is Superman 64. The graphics in this game are absolutely just wild. It's like HR Puff and Stuff come to life except in Superman format. And somebody on Discord bet me I couldn't get an HR Puff and Stuff reference in the video, and I've done it early. But moving over to a game that everyone loves compared to Superman 64 is going to be Sin and Punishment. Now there's two evolutions to this game. The first is that it is now working in certain levels. It used to be that pretty much everything would freeze in the first 5 seconds. That's no longer the case, but look at the fog effect on this source. If we move back over to the core that does the same thing without fog, you're going to notice a big visual difference in the two sources, so much so that I'm going to show you them side by side in just a moment. But see that skybox there, there's no banding and there's no fog being drawn by RDP or the Nintendo 64. And as we put them side by side, fog implementation on the left, no fog implementation on the right, you can see just how different this is. Now this is probably going to be a toggle as well, hopefully fingers crossed in the future, so that you can pick and choose when you want to have the fog in game and when you don't. It is just one of those things. It's such a fun look to the Nintendo 64 and it is inherently how you remember it. But putting them side by side is a really good example of what it looks like, and moving back over to the fog in game, this definitely is the one that I like more. In probably next video I will show you guys Turok. It's just not my favorite game. I wanted to cover some games I really love here. But again, just going through Sin and Punishment, if you've never played this game before, definitely check it out. This is the better of the two games. We had the one on the Wii, and while that is a ton of fun, the original in my opinion is still the best. But look at the sky here, look at everything coming in. This is with fog applied, and if we move back over to the core with no fog effects included, the sky is now just one solid blue mass. It doesn't look bad. It kind of looks like Sega and Nature with their arcade games where they would just do that one solid color. But it is interesting to move back and forth across the two cores to see how fog affects games, sometimes fundamentally and sometimes not much at all. It just depends on how the developers and artists implemented the fog effects in-game as to whether or not it's drastically dramatic or if it's a very fine touch that you can only just kind of see. Sometimes developers use the fog effect to hide polygons popping in with draw distances, and other times in games like Sin and Punishment here, it feels more like it's done for a very aesthetic effect, where it gives the game a little bit more drama. But even the cutscenes outside of the text being a little bit darker than it should be, they look good, they look correct. This is Sin and Punishment playing the way you would expect it until it freezes on certain levels. And honestly, in this game, I love it both with fog applied and with fog not applied. Now moving on to another game that never used to work that now is working is Pokemon Snap. Now the Nintendo 64 never had a light gun attachment or a light gun game. The closest you're going to get here is Pokemon Snap. Just think of it like Sega's The House of the Dead, except with Pokemon, not zombies. All jokes aside, I did have this when I was a kid and I did really enjoy it. And moving through with the fog, this is a game that I think really does benefit from the fog. Not only does it obscure a lot of the pop-in as the polygons are drawing at the far vanishing point of the screen, it also kind of gives the Pokemon in a distance a little bit of a I'm not quite sure what they are yet look. With the fog not on, it's one of those situations where you can really tell everything coming up, maybe too much so. This though, Three-Eyed Pikachu, 3 Mile Island Pikachu is just so much fun. Mario may have no eyes, but Pikachu got extras. But all jokes aside about eyes are not in the core, and you'll be seeing Mario with eyes very shortly, I'm pretty sure. Pokemon Snap is just 100% working here, exactly as you would expect it to. The controls are solid, the graphics are good, the music is great. It is just the game how you know and love and remember. I can't really see much difference between this and real hardware, but if you do notice anything, leave me a comment down below because I have not played every single game on the Nintendo 64 recently. But I will say the audio on this game also sounds spectacular, so go ahead and listen for like 35-45 seconds and I'll come back because I got some more games to show you that work perfectly. Just sounds great to my ears. Let me know what you think down below. And again, if you want to see me test other games on this series, just go ahead and leave me a comment and tell me what you'd love to see next time. If it's working, I'll make sure I get it into a video. But just going through Pokemon Snap here, if anything's not working, I can't tell. Now, anti-aliasing is not yet in the core, but that will come soon, and it's one of those things I don't really notice it all that much. Now, another game that's been promoted to work and that didn't used to work is going to be Ridge Racer. This is a port / remake on the Nintendo 64, and it's got its own look, feel, and vibe going on while also being instantly recognizable as a Ridge Racer game. You will see that some of the graphics on the road are just going to be straight up missing, but the speed and the look is here. It can be difficult to control these type of games even with the NSO Nintendo 64 controller. There's a lot of adjustments going on in the world of analog controls that someday I'll talk about once the score gets closer, but it is another game that is running. It does need a little bit more implementation of RDP to show up 100% of the time, but you just take a look at the footage and look at the feel of the speed. No frame rate counters right yet, I'm going to do those later, but honestly this just feels correct, and it's so much fun to be able to play another racing game on the Nintendo 64 because the library of racers was deep on this console and there's a lot of hits. Unfortunately for everyone that asked about Rush 2049, as of the making of this video it still does not work, but Rush 2 is in a much better state, and if you want to see that, go to the video I uploaded on Monday. But it's one of those things, this is just so much fun to watch and see happen in real time. Even the real play here is working exactly as you would expect. You just need a little bit more texture on the road, and then you would basically think that this was 100% done. And that's the thing, there's still fixes to be made to the core, there's still different bits of RDP that need to be implemented, and then there's going to be a lot of other things coming down the line. A lot of people say like they feel this core is almost done. It feels almost done in certain games, so there's other features of the Nintendo 64, including some sort of RAM lookups that I will get into more in depth when they come up, that are not implemented whatsoever yet, things that are keeping GoldenEye or Paper Mario from running in their entirety. So there is still work to be done, so don't think that this core is going to be buttoned up by the end of August and you're going to be playing the entire Nintendo 64 library then. FPGAZumSpass said one game playable by December. Maybe at this point in time it might be all games playable by December. We just have to wait and see what happens. But speaking of racing games, this one's for you, Mario. F-Zero is now working, and it's the IQ ROM. If you don't know what IQ is, it was a Chinese handheld that had a Nintendo 64 in it. Basically looks like a Nintendo 64 controller with a hockey puck in the center, and this was the way that Nintendo could distribute games in China when foreign consoles were not allowed, and IQ still, I believe, does exist, releasing some things for some companies. This was basically like a political workaround, but outside of geopolitical information for game consoles, F-Zero here is full speed, it's fast, it's fluid, but obviously you can tell it is missing graphics. It is still 100% playable, you can get through a race, it's not freezing, anything like that. It is just still missing some of that RDP implementation that will come further on down the line. And obviously once this game starts showing more, it's one of the first games I will show you, because this is one of the most popular racing games on the system, and I know the F-Zero love is 100% deep in the community. This is one of the games that everyone asks me about the most, and it is now playable here today. And that's the best part about getting new cores, you don't just get to see new things, you get to see games that didn't work before, because I would say as soon as this core came out, people were trying to see if F-Zero would boot. There is a spreadsheet on the MiSTer Discord that lists all the games that don't boot, that boot, and that are playable, and you can decide what you want to play. I would definitely put this in the playable category. It can be a little difficult to see the track on these nighttime stages, but you can get through a race, you can win it, you can do whatever you want if you have the talent. And it's another game where the soundtrack, the sound effects, and everything else just sound really good to my ear. So I'm going to give you a 30-second sample of F-Zero, and I'm going to come back and show you even more games that work, because we have some that didn't work before. But enjoy the music. In my opinion, that sounds 100% perfect, but if you have a different opinion, I'd love to hear it down below. But you'll see they got through a race there in 8th of 30th place, and that's a pretty decent result. Now another game that everyone's been asking to see is Mortal Kombat 4, and I will say when I was a kid and I got this, I was an absolute huge fan of it. As time has gone on, I have fallen a little bit less out of love with this game, but it is still a fun time, and it is great to see here on the Nintendo 64 core. You can see that it's running at a good speed, all of the moves and input set work, the graphics in the background look nice. I'm not super familiar with this game because it's probably been like 10 years since I have actually played it in real life, so tell me down below what you're seeing because I would be curious. And a lot of the times when you guys ask for requests on the channel, sometimes I played the game in the last couple of months and sometimes it's been a lot of years. Mortal Kombat 4 falls into the a lot of years category. But again, it's fast, it's fluid, and it is just fun to see. And this is one of the situations. On the Super Nintendo, Mortal Kombat basically had no blood whatsoever compared to the Sega Genesis version, and that was a big marketing ploy back in the day. On the Nintendo 64, you do see here that you do have those blood effects, and this is more of the Mortal Kombat you remember stylistically. But even with the background there, that face just animating, it is such a unique and individualized look. Mortal Kombat looks like Mortal Kombat. You can't mistake it for anything else. And this was when it did pivot over to 3D, which was an interesting look because before this, we were so used to watching those digitized sprites on screen. And honestly, I do prefer the digitized sprites. It makes me think more of Mortal Kombat, but the models in this look pretty effective conveying what's going on here. That does look like Johnny Cage, just not the Johnny Cage I know and love. But it's another game that's gone through multiple iterations on different cores as far as how it plays, and right here, right now, it is 100% playable. You can sit down, you can grab your controller, and you can have a fun time with it. And that's how I determine, in my own opinion, what is playable. If you can sit down, grab your controller, and have a fun time, that's playable category in my opinion. But obviously, Johnny Cage lost here. His back was broken out, and now he's going to fall down the well of despair. You know, it's at the bottom of it, but YouTube doesn't like me showing you. Then moving on to a game that a lot of people actually requested and I thought was pretty charming is Densha De Go. Now I actually own an original arcade PCB for this that I'll be showing off on the channel in the next couple of weeks. I haven't really played it yet because the controls are quite complicated to set up, and you will see sometimes it likes to black screen in the Nintendo 64 core. But it is a game that does get in-game, does draw graphics, and it is one of those games that is a Japanese exclusive that people do know and love. This series has been around for a very long time, it still continues to exist, and it still draws in an audience. So I know for some people this is going to be a very exciting thing that they get to play on the core. Now as far as the controls are concerned, obviously Densha De Go is normally played with a gigantic custom controller, but you can play it perfectly effectively with just your standard controller, whatever it is you want to use. But this is another game that never used to work on the previous cores that does work now, and the people that love this series are absolute fanatics. They've played every single game. Honestly, I got the Densha De Go board because I was planning on converting it over to something else, which I have done, but I still have the ROM so I can slot them right back in and play that game in the future. But if you don't speak Japanese, I wish you the best of luck with this because this game is very stringent as to what you need to do to succeed as a train operator. You're going to see the game over screen pretty much 10 out of 10 times that you play this game unless you become an absolute train conducting expert. It is for people that are fans of this specific type of game. They learn it, they love it, they know it, and they succeed at it. But for the rest of us, it is just a fun curiosity that you can look at on the work in progress Nintendo 64 FPGA core and say, okay, it does work, that's cool, what else is going on? But it's game over for Densha De Go, and there goes my Japanese train conductor pension. Looks like I'll be living on the streets when I get older. But of course, when we talk about FOG, you have to talk about Superman 64 because the developers had so much trouble with the hardware and the draw distances. They basically added in the most FOG of any game you're going to see on the Nintendo 64 and then wrote it into the story saying it was kryptonite FOG. They basically tried to take the technical limitations and the issues they were having with game development and put it into the lore of the game in and of itself, which honestly I probably would have done too. If there's a way to explain it away, like kryptonite FOG, you take that 10 out of 10 times. But you will see that this first level actually can be beaten if you're a basic pro gamer. Andy D helped me with the captures this week, so obviously he's about ready to start his career as a pro gamer until he loses. This game is just insanely hard, folks. But Sin and Punishment is my big takeaway for this video in two different reasons. One, it is now playable for most levels and it doesn't freeze. Two, it is a great example of FOG used correctly on the Nintendo 64. It adds atmosphere and vibe without trying to hide technical limitations. It's an artistic and stylistic choice and not trying to hide a draw distance. And for that reason, it is the best game on this current batch of testing. And if you've never played before, like I said earlier, 100% give this game a go. It is a 10 out of 10. But that's the current situation as the recording of this video. I know Robert is planning on adding in some more features that will give Mario eyes in Super Mario 64, but I will save that for the next video because honestly, I didn't want to look at Mario this time around. It is one of my favorite games on the console, but it is a very easy example to use, so I try to space those out. But again, if you have any requests for future videos, leave them down below, and I will definitely make sure to incorporate those. And I'm planning on doing these videos as changes come, so expect to see another one soon. Short of that, bye-bye.